Hello, and welcome to the River Cruising Masterclass podcast. Today is going to be one of those special episodes that we're going to actually talk about something that's important for any type of traveler. But I kind of wanted to highlight for you because it is something that I'm actually going to be talking about on a radio show. So come and listen with me as we talk about travel insurance. So this is kind of your little bonus episode. I'm going to be going to some of those details, but I do also want to stress that you need to read your policies because, again, I don't know everything. No one is an expert, and each policy is written differently. So you can also reach out to me as your travel advisor, and I can kind of go over some of the pros and cons and what I recommend for that sort of stuff. So let's go into it. All righty. Now, welcome to our fun show about travel insurance and why it's important. Now, you might think of a couple of things. So first of all, some of you might be like, I am not old enough to even think about travel insurance. It's not something that's going to affect me. I am invincible. I totally get it. I am 32. Half of the time, do I really need travel insurance? Am I really the person who's going to get sick and injured enough that I'm going to have to go to a hospital? But the thing is you never know when that is actually going to happen. So whether you are on a budget, whether you have, $100,000 to go on a vacation and we're going to go all out, you are definitely someone who needs travel insurance. So today we're going to cover the costs, some myths, share some stats on how it kind of affects that normal person, and real stories from travelers who were saved by travel insurance. And I will tell you, my family is one of them. We have both. I have a story of when my dad and us, we didn't think that we needed it, that it was just a money grab. And then I also have a time where after that happened, we always use it and it has still benefited us. The thing is you are paying just like you do for when you have car insurance for that what if and if it doesn't happen, but you also are praying it never does. So you honestly want it to be something money thrown away because you never want to use it, but when you need it, thank God you have it. So let's talk about it just in this. In the last couple of years, Americans have spent over $4.2 billion on travel insurance. And yet many travelers, especially younger ones, having the idea that I will be fine, but you never know when a travel hiccup can become that financial disaster. So let's kind of dive in. I'm trying to use this new I'm working with AI these days, and it is not always my friend. And all right. Let's just talk about it. So 77 million Americans were covered by travel insurance in 2022. But those who purchased it, only 38% of travelers actually purchased travel insurance. And 60% of those are 46 to 60 versus only 45% of those who are 18 to 29. So it seems like younger people obviously assume that they are without travel insurance, which is understandable. But I will say that there has been times where I have rolled my ankle. I my friend and I were being dumb on a cruise ship, and we decided to do the footloose thing where I was hoisting her into the air and we both fell, and she sprained her ankle, and we had to get it completely wrapped by the Royal Caribbean on their ship. And it was more expensive than I thought it would be because they did an x-ray, they checked up everything, and it was close to $1,500. So that is just something to think about. And that was in 2019. So God knows how much it costs now. And most people think that their trip isn't expensive enough to insure. 14% are saying they're saving money because $300 when we're looking at a trip, it's just another expense, right? And most uninsured travelers who have smooth trips don't regret not buying insurance because you never don't regret it when you don't have anything that happens. However, when people who do have something happen and they don't have travel insurance immediately regret not getting it when they look at how much everything costs. It's the same as pet insurance. My mom and I always have a discussion about how expensive pet insurance is. And I am perfectly fine paying my $70 a month for pet insurance for my dog. The main person of the Poodle Booked It, which is my travel agency, because I would much rather pay $70 a month than $20,000, which is how much she had to pay for her dog to have cancer treatments. So that is just something that you have to think about when doing this as well. So I kind of wanted to go over some of the coverage overviews. And this is where we're going to kind of talk about the different types of travel insurance there is, because not every travel insurance claim is created equally. It is basically a package of protection, just like you do with car insurance, right? Like there are some that protect your car, some that protect you and the other person you hit's car. And there is all of those some of those things. So there is the before your trip. So you have travel insurance that will cover your before the trip. So it'll cover from the day you buy the policy until the day you actually get back from the trip. And so this will also cover like your trip cancellation protection will cover if you have to cancel or postpone your trip. And this can be like if you or a family member gets seriously sick or injured, if there's a death in the family, if your home floods right before a vacation, or like certain travel bans or natural disasters happen. If you have to cancel, the insurance will cover all prepaid non-refundable costs. And I want you to think flights, hotels deposit, tour fees, cruise tickets. Now with flights, I will tell you that a lot of flight companies are doing it now where you get travel credits. So if you are wanting to get reimbursed by your travel insurance, you have to actually decline that. You can't double dip. I wish you could, but most of the time you can't. So most of this is going to just cover all of those things that you would lose if you had to cancel last minute. And so, it's kind of like, why would you want to lose all the money on a dream vacation if you can just pay a certain cost to get it covered before? And this is one of those ones where it's the before trip. Now, I will tell you each policy has a different view on what is covered. And so some of it will be like family member includes a certain percentage of your family. Like it has to live in your household. It has to be immediate family versus like grandparents, siblings, things of that nature. So make sure as you're reviewing these policies that you really are looking at what it covers. And most of the time, the more it covers, the more it covers, the more expensive it's going to be, just so you know. And so when you're traveling, a whole different set of protections come in. And there's actually multiple times of trip insurances you can get. You can get the before and during, or you can just get the during, right, where it's going to cover if anything happens during the trip. And that can be travel medical insurance. So this covers if you get sick or injured during a trip. It'll pay for your doctor's visits, hospital stays, medicine, up to the policy's limits. And this is crucial because most regular health insurance plans and Medicare don't cover you outside the United States. If you break a leg hiking in Switzerland, your health insurance won't pay the Swiss health bill. Medical insurance covers up to pay those for at least, most good plans will do up to $100,000 in medical coverage. And that's what like Forbes is going to recommend. And many countries that you're going to, or actually a lot of tour companies will require that you have travel insurance for visitors. Another thing that it covers is emergency medical evacuations. And that is something that is a big ticket item because it gets very expensive very quickly. And this is going to be like if you're in a remote area or you're in a country without high level care, it is going to, and if you fall like critically ill, it is going to medevac you to another location. So if you're on a cruise ship, it's going to be getting the Coast Guard involved, medevacing you to a hospital. It's going to be if you are on an African safari and you have to go to a actual location. And those can cost Up to $1 million. So 100,000, 250, even up to $1 million. So when you're going to certain places, make sure that that medical evacuation coverage is included. And you are going to want to make sure that depending on where you go, that has a certain amount, because getting a private helicopter, private plane, getting all that sort of stuff and getting to you quickly is very expensive. So you're going to want to have that so that you most likely will never need it, but when you do, you are going to be thankful that you do have that part of your travel insurance. Another thing that it covers is not actually the medical side of things. It is your travel delays or missed connections. So if your flight gets delayed or you miss a connection, any extra costs that you have, your hotels, your meals, catching up on your tour, travel insurance will reimburse that up to certain costs. So in 2023, about 14% of travel insurance claims were for travel delays, and they can kind of help you get to that sort of thing. It can also be for baggage loss, damaged, or delay. You have to check because each one will have like a limit towards how much per day that they'll cover, what they will do for that, and how you can do that. But that is also going to be on top of the airlines. So the airlines will also have baggage loss and delays. So you are just going to want to focus on that part of it. And some of the other benefits that can come in handy is going to be dental emergencies, emergency reunions. So it'll also cover like family members flying out if you were hospitalized abroad. Something that we don't like to think about and probably will never happen, but repatriation of remains. If something was to happen to you out of the country, it is a lot to get you back to the United States. There's a lot of legal hoops you have to go through. There's a lot of things that can happen in that situation. And your travel insurance will help you out with that. And it also has like an accidental death or dismemberment payout, which are not the fun things to talk about. I totally get it. This is not let's have a great time on a vacation. This is the conversation. And that's why it's a bonus episode to this sort of thing is these are things to think about as an additional cost to your vacation that you want to just be prepared for, because you never know when life is going to happen. And I wish it didn't have to happen that way, right? So, what is the actual cost of insurance? So, travel insurance worth the cost? So generally the cost of the travel insurance is about 5 to 10%, right? So it's going to cost more if you get a plan that includes more. Like there's also a service where it's cancel for any reason insurance, and that is going to raise the cost significantly. But if that is something you're interested in, where if you just want to be able to say, I want to cancel this no matter what, I want to be able to do this, that is something that you can do, but you have to pay for it, right? Like it's all about risk and reward. So travel insurance generally costs about 5 to 10%. So if you have a $30,000 trip. That's extreme. Sorry, my bad. Let's just say $3,000 to make it easy. Your policy is going to cost you about $150 to $400, right? I'm rounding up just so that you can see like what it's going to be. And that can be for two people, that can be for whatever, but factors will affect the price. So the older you are, the more you are going to pay for travel insurance because generally speaking, you are the ones that are most likely to actually use the policy. So please be aware that this is just a generalization of what it can cost, but age does play a significant factor in that price point. And with that, you're going to want to compare the travel insurance offered by the company you're purchasing it through versus just buying it by itself. Most of the time, I recommend purchasing travel insurance separate from the company that you are going on the trip with, just because their insurance is going to be really generic and it's not going to cover everything that you need. However, if we get to that point and if you were booking with me, we can have a discussion on what covers what and if it's worth it to pay additional for the private, or if the better value for you is to go with the cruise or tour provider. So one of the things it says is right. Like, so if you're a 25-year-old and you're going out for a week in Mexico, it might cost you about $50 to $60 for your travel insurance. Now, if you're a 65-year-old and you're doing a month in Europe, it can cost you, I'm going to say 750 to 800. I have clients who I just quoted someone who was 75. He's doing a week and a half in Ireland, and with his flights and his golf package, so they're doing 10 days golfing in all of this, famous places that you go to golf in Ireland. My brain doesn't want to work today. It was about $500. And that was 8 to 9% of the cost. But that is something just to think about. Now, when it comes to the cost of insurances, not to scare you into buying something, because I want you to make an educated decision if you decide whether or not you do or do not want travel insurance. Now, I personally, as a 32-year-old, I do travel at least 4 or 5 times a year. I do an annual plan, and an annual plan won't cover a lot of the issues beforehand, but it does include all of the medical stuff on a trip, which is what I'm really focused on. But a medical evacuation by air can cost about $50,000 to $100,000 just for a general evacuation. And if you are in a remote part of Africa, if you are in Antarctica, if you are doing some of those extreme trips, it can cost even more. And so some of the shorter evacuations, let's just talk about an air ambulance to, where did my backdrop go? Medical treatment abroad can also be very expensive, though it does vary by country. For example, a night at a European hospital could cost about a few $1,000s, which is less than a US hospital, but still significant. Some countries demand payment up front if you are not a citizen. And so, for example, I had a case where a traveler's appendix burst in South America, and the surgery and hospital stay was a total of $30,000, which their insurance covered. Without it, they would have had to have a credit card with an extremely high limit. I know myself personally, it would have had to have been multiple travel insurances. And so, like a trip cancellation, for example, without insurance means eating the whole cost. And most of the time, you're not going to get anything back. A lost or delayed luggage without insurance, airlines have some liability, but having that travel insurance just kind of helps you out without having to deal with all of the drama of that. And travel delays, so you're out of pocket for hotels, meals, flights. Without insurance, you kind of have to do that. Airlines might give you a meal voucher or a hotel, but if it's a weather-related or an act of God, airlines very rarely do this. I have seen the lines for American at Dallas, DFW, and it is disgusting. Now, one travel insurance claims in one of the trip interruption was a max of that they had claimed out, not a max, but the fact that they had to cut their trip short. Travel insurance will also cover that. So travel insurance, if your trip is cut short, they will reimburse you for the part of the trip that wasn't affected by it or was affected by it. And then one medical claim, could have been $48,000. Now, I kind of wanted to do It's Happened to Me. I will tell you, the first time it happened to my family and I, my mom had just been diagnosed with cancer, and we didn't have travel insurance. It wasn't something my dad believed in. He thought it was just a money grab. He's like, it's not going to affect us. And when it finally did, and he had to eat the cost for a trip, it was the first and the last time. And ever since then, he has always gotten travel insurance. And this was when my parents were in their late 40s. So it's not like we're talking about something that happened when they were in their 60s and it was a typical time to buy travel insurance. Same with myself. I had a trip planned to go to somewhere, and I had a gallbladder incident where my gallbladder decided it was time. It didn't like me anymore. And my travel insurance was able to help reimburse all of the costs that we had lost. So I'll just say, there is a couple of things. So, for example, Patricia and John are in their 60s and they never bought travel insurance. Before going on a European river cruise, they decided to get one just because they'd never done one of those. Days before departure, John wasn't feeling well, and it turns out that he had kidney stones that required immediate surgery. And the cruise line did no refunds because they were past the cancellation policy. But because they bought in travel insurance, their $10,000 trip was refunded. And once you fill out the necessary documents, which includes a doctor's note. Like, it's not like they're just going to just give you the money and saying, "Oh, you didn't feel well." No, you do have to still do like the back work on that. Now, we can go through a couple of other things. Like, I've had lost luggage in London. So I had luggage that left in Paris when I was going to London and I was headed out on a cruise. So my luggage didn't get to me for 3 or 4 days. With the baggage delay coverage, I was able to get authorized to spend money on my clothes, on my toiletries. I was able to get it reimbursed. And when my luggage showed up, I had a bunch of extra clothes that I was able to take home with me. Another thing to think about is hurricanes, right? So, like, if you were going on a Caribbean trip and where you were going was if there's a hurricane coming while you were going to be there, if certain things of that nature, the hotel has non-refundable rates. Without insurance, you would have lost your trip or you would have had to go during a hurricane. But because if you had travel insurance, that's something that could be covered. Now, debunking some myths and misconceptions about travel insurance. Just a couple of things to think about. Myth one is I'm young and I'm healthy and I don't need it. Just because you're young and healthy doesn't mean you're immune to unexpected events. You can be in great shape and you can still get food poisoning. You can twist an ankle. I had a friend who got ran over by a cab in Rome. We don't talk about it. Or have a family emergency back home. I know when I was going to Australia, I was always getting travel insurance because my dad's health was bad and I never knew if I needed to fly home immediately. If you are also engaging in adventurous activities like skiing or scuba diving, maybe zip lining, have higher risk of injuries. So those can have expensive medevac costs as well as just costs in the hospital that you might not think about. So myth number two is your credit card travel perks are enough. So some premium credit cards, I have them. The Sapphire Reserve, the Amex Platinum do include some travel protections, trip cancellation, trip delay, rental car coverage, but most of them don't include your travel, medical, or evacuation insurance. So they might refund your flight if you had to cancel, but if you need a hospital in Europe, that's on you. Always check your card to see what it covers and making sure that you have that. And it also might be secondary coverage with lots of limits. Like a card might have a trip cancellation at $5,000, whereas if you are on a more expensive trip or you have a long delay, it might not be fully covered. I will say that you might also want to look at I know that I had this where if you didn't buy the entire trip on one credit card, they wouldn't cover it because you didn't buy the entire thing on their card. Myth three is that like travel insurance is too expensive and I'd rather spend that money on my trip. I totally get it. But for 5 to 10% of your trip, that is something that we can budget into the price so that you have that protection and I don't have that anxiety when you go on your trip so that if anything does happen, you don't have to spend tens of thousands of dollars on your vacation. You can just enjoy it for what it is. Travel insurance companies never pay claims, they'll find loopholes. So it is true that you have to meet the policy's conditions for a claim to be approved. And yes, sometimes things aren't covered. I will totally agree that that can happen. If you cancel because you don't feel like going, that's not covered. If something happens to your flight ahead of time and they reimburse you and then the new cost is more, some policies don't cover that. The key is to read your policy or ask questions beforehand and know what is covered. For instance, most policies exclude risky behavior. So if you decide to base jump off a cliff and you get hurt, probably not covered. You can also do extreme sports coverage. Pre-existing coverage conditions also won't be covered unless you get a waiver or you buy early. So yes, you have to understand the terms. And just like with your normal home or car insurance, they do want to help, but they are also have things that they cover and what they don't. So reach out to your travel advisor. If you want help with that, you can also reach out to me and we can kind of look at what's the best insurance for your trip and how we can make sure that you have that 24/7 assistance and can arrange the care and payments so you're not out of pocket for an emergency. So myth number 5 is I can always buy insurance later, like right before a trip if I get worried. So you should buy travel insurance as early as possible if you are going to be buying the insurance that covers before the trip. So if you're doing the trip cancellation coverage, you want it to take effect the day your policy buys. If you buy it a week before, the only thing it's covering is why you are on the trip. So make sure you understand which one you are looking to buy versus just figuring out, just like buying just because you've gotten this last minute stress. Or if you think, oh, I know that I'm getting sick, I want to buy it now. Or I just found out, I had someone who's like, I just found out that my son lost his job and I don't know if he'll be able to go on this trip. So I want to buy travel insurance so that we can get reimbursed if he can't go. That is not going to be a covered expense because it is already a known situation. If someone loses their job before a trip, that is a covered expense as long as it is not known before the travel insurance is purchased. And they will ask for records. Like they're not just going to hand you over a check for that cost. So just be prepared that you are going to have to document everything when it comes to filing a travel insurance claim. So, travel protection from my cruise or my airline is the same as travel insurance. So, sometimes it is, but I will tell you that travel insurance that you purchase protection through cruise lines and tour operators are often very limited and have some sort of cancellation waiver, but also they will only cover that part of the trip. So if you don't buy every single thing through that cruise line, your hotels, your airlines, if you're doing a pre or post, you are going to want to make sure that you purchase it through an independent travel insurance company versus through the cruise line. And I will tell you that third party most of the time is more inexpensive and covers more because it's not a generic policy that is covering everything. So make sure that you are comparing apples to apples when you are doing that. So, just some tips on when you're choosing an insurance policy. Determine your need. So, figure out what you're most concerned about. Are you concerned about the trip cancellation before a trip, the medical coverage while you're on a trip? Are you worried about both? Do you need to have higher end coverage because you're going somewhere that has more extreme like possibilities? For example, you're going to Africa, you're going to Antarctica. Compare the plans. So, making sure that you're comparing the plans or asking your travel advisor why some plans are offering $250,000 in evacuation and others are $1 million. And also, if you want to do the cancel for any reason, also primary versus secondary medical. So, if there are some that are primary medical plans and there are some that are secondary. Many plans are secondary, and it basically means you still have to file a claim through your normal health insurance, even though it will not be covered. And then your secondary medical insurance will come in. So it's just going to be an additional step into that process. A next one is if you have any kind of medical history, try to buy within the 14-day window of your initial trip payment so that you get the pre-existing conditions waiver. And you also must insure 100% of your trip and be medically fit when you qualify. So just make sure that when you're doing that. And then also, what kind of activities are you doing on your trip, right? Are you planning on scuba diving, paragliding, climbing, Kilimanjaro? Check your policy for what is considered hazardous activities so that you are covered for what you are planning on doing. Also, destination requirements. So some tour companies and some countries might require travel insurance. So just double check that when you are doing something that you know what you are looking for. If you want maximum flexibility, consider a cancel for any reason. It'll typically reimburse 50 to 75% of the trip cost if you cancel for any reasons. It might just be like, hey, I can't go anymore. I don't feel like it. It will cover up to that, but it is very expensive. So imagine it being an additional like 5% just to be able to have that. Now, if you travel a lot, like I said, I do about 2 or 3 international trips. I do more than that. Consider an annual travel insurance plan. It might be a little bit more affordable for every trip because it includes every trip that you will go on to. Now, the last thing is keep the documentation. while traveling, making sure that you have the emergency contact information and policy number, contact if anything does happen, but also making sure that you keep receipts of any expenses that you intend to claim. And if there is a doctor involved, making sure that you have a doctor, like, note from them on what is going on and how it is going to be done. So, just the key takeaways. Travel insurance is peace of mind. It's a small investment that covers if anything bad does happen for your trip. Good policies will protect both your wallet and your well-being. So for trip delays, baggage loss, and also your well-being for your medical emergencies and evacuations. It is essential for international travel. Buying early is better than waiting till the last minute. And just so you know, your age does play a factor into what the cost of the trip is. As you kind of heard, there are examples of where this has been effective. No one wants to use travel insurance because that means that your trip has had something happen to it that you weren't expecting. However, if it does happen, having travel insurance just gives you that peace of mind so that you aren't on the hook for 10, 20, even $100,000 in losses. So if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. You know, I will be more than willing to help you walk through the different policies and which one would be best for you and your trip. But as always, this is the Poodle Booked It for the River Cruise Masterclass. You can find me at thepoodlebookedit.com, on Facebook, on Instagram. On Facebook, we have an amazing group, River Cruising Tips and Tricks with Sydney. And we can kind of go over all of your fun things that you want to do for a river cruise. But if you just have questions about your Mexico trip, your Caribbean cruise, anything like that, and the possibility of travel insurance, let me know because we can help you with that as well. All right. Other than that, I hope you have an amazing day. And thank you for listening to this extra episode on the River Cruise Masterclass.